Network Entertainment.
This episode may cover sensitive topics like sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking, which could be triggering. While we recognize the challenges this content may pose, we advise you to prioritize your safety and well-being.
Shocking, sad, revealing, and deeply researched. PH Murder Stories podcast covers the true account of infamous killings and true crime stories from the Philippines.
There's no such thing as questions, just hidden answers. Stay tuned as we revisit the inconceivable crimes that exist.
Some listeners may find the following content of PH Murder Stories highly disturbing due to its graphic nature. PH Murder Stories does not condone nor promote violence of all sorts.
Viewer discretion is advised. Sagay City, located in the northern part of the province of Negros Occidental, is a significant hub for agricultural resources, where its local community is deeply connected. Historically, Sagay has been a major player in the sugar industry, which is a significant economic driver in the province. However, despite economic gains from the sugar plantations in Sagay, most of its farmers and plantation workers are being treated poorly by greedy landowners and land grabbers, some of which are influential and are supported by some local politicians or possibly even nationwide elected leaders.
The poor treatment received by sugar farmers in Sagay is just an understatement. Some of those who stand up and fight for their rights against these greedy, influential landowners are often getting brutally punished, and some are getting killed. On the evening of October 20, 2018, 9 farmers of the National Federation of Sugar Workers, which included 4 women and 2 minors, were having dinner in a makeshift tent when they were attacked by armed men. There were survivors in the incident, though their names were not reported to protect their identities. The brutal incident happened at Hacienda Nene, a sugarcane plantation located in Barangay Bulanon, Sagay City.
You are listening to the PH Murder Stories podcast, and this is the 14th episode of Season 4.
Na-autopsiya na ng PNP ang mga bangkay ng 9 na biktima ng massacre sa Sagay City, Negros Occidental. Nakumbinsi rin ng pulisya ang mga kaalak ng mga namatay na ipa-autopsy ang mga bangkay, lalo't makakatulong daw ito sa imbestigasyon at pagsampa ng kaso. Ayon sa SOCO, nagtamo ng maraming tama ng bala sa katawan ng mga biktima at sinunog ang 3 sa kanila. Inihintay naman ng PNP mula sa crime lab ang resulta ng paraffin test sa mga biktima para malaman kung may nagpaputok din ng baril sa kanila. Ito dahil may na-recover daw na kalibre 38 mula sa isa sa mga biktima.
Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff Carlito Galvez together with Police Regional Office 6 Director John Bulalakaw personally inspected the place where 9 farm workers were massacred in Sagay, Negros Occidental. PNP now has identified 1 of 5 suspects in the massacre through the help of a witness.
The witness knows personally one of the suspects because accordingly he lives here. And therefore he could tell exactly what happened at saka kung sino talaga yung ano ang identity ng suspect na binabanggit ng ating witness.
PNP and AFP probers are looking at land grabbing as among the motives of the crime. They also tagged members of the NPA in the massacre.
Common knowledge, sabi nga ng ating governor kanina, almost all are supporting the NPA dito sa lugar na ito. Reason? Because of poverty and yung distribution of wealth, unequal distribution of wealth.
Meanwhile, the PNP Crime Lab, in its preliminary report, said that there was a high probability that the victims were already dead when burned unmercifully. Probers are still determining the distance and how the suspects shot dead the victims.
Pinakamaganda ma-perform natin yung thorough examination, what we call autopsy examination with dissection para makita natin yung loob pa ng katawan nila kung posible bang buhay pa sila o patay na nung sinunog.
AFP and PNP meanwhile vowed that justice will be rendered to the victims.
Kanina talaga medyo maluha-luha ako dahil kasi nakita ko talaga yung ang biktima talaga sila. Kawawa yung pamilya. So we promise to them that we will dig deeper on this. Please, pagtiwalaan nyo ang PNP at saka ang armed forces.
Farmers and plantation workers often receive very low wages, insufficient to meet their basic needs. This economic disparity leads to a cycle of poverty and indebtedness. At the time of the Sagay Massacre in 2018, the National Federation of Sugar Workers was actively fighting for land reform and the rights of sugarcane farmers. The Federation's members were involved in a campaign called Bungkalan, which involves the collective farming of idle lands to make them productive and to assert their claims on these lands. These efforts were part of a broader struggle against the concentration of land ownership and the exploitation of farm workers by large landowners. The massacre occurred during the first night of a Bungkalan activity on Hacienda Nene, where the farmers were planting vegetables to sustain themselves during the Tiempo Muerto, or dead season between sugarcane harvests.
The autopsy reports of the victims of the Sagay Massacre revealed several critical details about the nature of the attack. According to the Commission on Human Rights, or CHR, the victims were shot from a distance of about 75 meters, indicating that the perpetrators were likely positioned strategically. The reports also noted that 3 of the victims were burned after being shot. The CHR recommended that the victims' families submit the bodies for forensic tests, despite having already signed waivers for the autopsies. These findings highlighted the brutal and premeditated nature of the massacre.
According to the Philippine National Police, or PNP, there are 5 suspects who committed the brutal killings of the 9 sugar farmers. The PNP claims an eyewitness has knowledge behind the identity of one of the 5 suspects, conveying that he personally knows the suspect and that the suspect resides near the vicinity of the crime. Furthermore, the PNP claims that land grabbing is the motive behind the brutal incident. The police force also told the media that Negros Occidental Governor Alfredo Marañon Jr., who was the incumbent leader at the time, informed the PNP that the New People's Army, or NPA, had already infiltrated the area where the brutal crime was committed. Therefore, the PNP and the local government of Negros Occidental were convinced that the NPA wanted to grab the lands that were supposed to be given to the sugar farmers, brutally killing them in the process. However, leftist groups strongly refuted the claims made by the PNP that the NPA was involved in the Sagay Massacre. They argued that the accusations were part of a broader effort to discredit peasant organizations and their struggle for land reform. A fact-finding mission led by human rights and civil society groups pointed to a paramilitary group associated with the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, as the likely perpetrators. The National Federation of Sugar Workers, or NFSW, whose members were among the victims, also denied any links to the NPA and condemned the PNP's allegations. On the other hand, the Apolinario Gatmaytan command of the NPA also accused landlords about their private armies of being behind the massacre, rejecting the PNP's narrative as a series of what they described as heinous lies.
Tungo sa Department of Justice o DOJ ang mag-inang survivor ng Sagay Massacre Reklamo ng inang survivor, ginagamit umano ng mga otoridad ang kanyang anak na si Lester upang tumestigo laban sa New People's Army na ikinigiit ng mga itong nasa likod ng Sagay Massacre.
Kahit military, nagsasabi rin na the child can pinpoint that NPA daw ang gumawa nung massacre. Kaya lumayo yung mag-ina sa Negros ay nag-seek talaga sila ng sanctuary. Dahil yun nga, patuloy silang hinahabol ng mga pulis, pinipilit na gawing star witness nila doon sa Sagay Massacre.
Paglabag sa Republic Act 7610 o Anti-Child Abuse Law ang isinampang reklamo ng mag-ina laban sa hepe at ilang tauhan ng Sagay PNP. Mariin namang itinanggi ng Sagay PNP na pinipilit nilang tumestigo si Lester.
Yung allegation na yan, ma'am, actually fabricated yan. Ba't naman namin pilitin yung bata? Tapos yung bata actually during interview at saka pag subscribe na napilitin, nandun mismo yung prosecutor, nandun din yun mismo yung ama, at saka yung SWD na magpa-subscribe ng statement niya. May video kami yan.
Reklamong pang-aabuso naman o kasong paglabag sa Republic Act 9262 o Violence Against Women and Children ang inihain ng mag-ina laban sa biological father ng bata dahil sa umano'y patuloy na panggigipit, pang-aabuso at harassment sa kanilang anak. Pinipilit rin umano ng ama nito na bumalik ang kanyang mag-ina at makipagtulungan sa mga pulis.
Nagpapatuloy yung pananakot niya sa kliyente namin, sa kanilang mag-ina, at pinipilit niyang makuha yung anak, mabawi yung anak. Tinakot din niya na kakasuhan din niya pati yung nanay.
Magugunitang 9 na magsasaka kabilang na ang 4 na babae at 2 minor de edad ang pinaslang ng ilang armadong kalalakihan sa Hacienda Nene, Purok Pine Tree, Barangay Bulanon, Sagay City, gabi noong October 20. Ang mga biktima ay pawang mga miyembro ng National Freedom of Sugar Workers o NSFW na nakibahagi sa tinatawag na bungkalan, isang kampanya kung saan inookupa ng mga magsasaka ang mga tiwangwang na lupa na bahagi ng Agrarian Reform Program ngunit hindi pa na ipamamahagi sa mga benepisyaryo.
There were survivors, including a mother and son, who faced legal complications regarding their testimonies. However, the PNP claims that the people behind this brutal murder was from the New People's Army, or NPA. In fact, the legal representation of the mother and son survivors have claimed that the PNP and the military is forcing the younger witness to pinpoint the NPA, despite not truly knowing who was behind the killings. In response, the PNP debunked the claims of the survivor's lawyer, claiming that they wouldn't force a child to testify.
Nakikipagkwentuhan kagabi sa harap ng isang tindahan ang human rights lawyer na si Attorney Benjamin Ramos nang may tumigil na motorsiklo sa kanyang likod. Naka-helmet ang rider at naka-hood naman ang nakaangkas na bumaril kay Ramos.
Mayong gabi, attorney.
Sabi ng isang testigo, bumati pa ng magandang gabi ang gunman bago binaril si Ramos. May 3 tama ng bala ang abogado na naging sanhi ng kanyang pagkamatay. Si Ramos ang Secretary General ng National Union of People's Lawyers Negros Occidental Chapter. Tumutulong ang grupo sa mga kaso ng mga progresibong grupo, kabilang na ang kaso ng Sagay Massacre. Naniniwala ang grupong karapatan na may kinalaman nga ito sa pagpatay kay Ramos.
Bilang human rights lawyer, si Attorney Ben under attack.
Sabi ni Karapatan Negros Secretary General Clarissa Dagatan, ilang beses nang nakatanggap ng death threat si Attorney Ramos.
Wala pa tayong sinisingle out kung ano yung motibo, sir. Isa na dito, sir, is baka yung mga previous cases na hawak niya, sir. And at the same time, is titignan din natin yung iba pang anggulo na accordingly, may mga threat din daw, sabi nung asawa niya, sir, previous pa, sir.
Hindi muna nagbigay ng pahayag sa media ang pamilya ni Ramos. Samantala, tuloy ang investigasyon ng pulisya sa krimen.
Attorney Benjamin Ramos, a human rights lawyer and the Secretary General of the National Union of People's Lawyers, was actively involved in providing legal assistance to the families of the Sagay Massacre victims. Tragically, on November 6, 2018, just weeks after the massacre, Attorney Ramos was shot dead by unidentified assailants in Cabangcalan City, Negros Occidental. His murder was widely condemned by human rights groups and sparked calls for justice and protection for human rights defenders.
As of the latest updates, the case remains unsolved. The families of the victims, along with human rights organizations, continue to seek justice for the Sagay 9 and attorney Ben Ramos. The investigation has faced numerous challenges, including allegations of harassment and intimidation against witnesses and advocates. Despite these obstacles, efforts to hold the perpetrators accountable persist, with ongoing calls for a thorough and impartial investigation.
The Sagay Massacre and the subsequent murder of attorney Ben Ramos highlight the ongoing struggles and dangers faced by farmers and human rights defenders in the Philippines. The quest for justice continues as the victims' families and supporters remain steadfast in their demand for accountability and reform. We hope this current administration is capable of bringing justice and clarity to what truly happened to the Sagay 9 and to ensure the arrest of all people involved in this brutal incident. May this ongoing case not get overlooked.
Thank you for listening to PH Murder Stories.
If you like this episode, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
You can also support our show on Patreon. Any amount you donate would benefit our team to keep doing what we love, which is to provide more true crime episodes for our listeners. Link in the description.
For further updates from our show, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at PH Murder Stories. And subscribe to our YouTube channel at PH Murder Stories.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.